I was 11, 12 years old and was drawn to an older crowd, drinking beer and smoking pot. And it started out pretty innocently and just a joint here and a joint there, and then we were experimenting with other drugs. And by the time I was 14, 15, I was using pretty regular, getting high every day, but still being able to hide it from my parents. By the time I was 16, I was not to be trusted. I was stealing from my folks, I was stealing from my sisters, and I was asked to leave the house because I couldn't be trusted, and I did. And when I turned 17, I found out from some friends that had joined the military at 17 that all you had to have was your parents' signature and you could go in. So I sought my father's approval to go into the military, and he signed for me gladly. This will straighten me out. I need to figure things out, and I need to get on the right track. And I thought that the service would be the avenue. My dad was in the military. My dad was a lifer in the Air Force. So I had been brought up in the Air Force. I had lived all over the world. I was born in Hawaii, and we never lived anywhere longer than 4 years. When I came back stateside and was reintroduced to civilian living, I just continued to sell drugs, and that's how I made my living for several years. My connection, the person I bought my drugs from, told me about a place called Teen Challenge. And she said, "You need help, Mike. For a connection to tell you you need help, you got to be pretty bad." And I went to one of the services, and then I had a counseling session with one of the counselors named Marty Coleman. We talked for an hour and 15 minutes. And he explained to me that there was a 3-month waiting list to get into Teen Challenge. And I would need to come to services regularly to show an interest in getting into the program, to show a desire for change. Well, I didn't have 3 months. I didn't know what was going to happen when I left there. So I left and went on about my way. A few days later, I tried to take my life. I tried to overdose myself with heroin. And I had known people who had injected much smaller doses that are no longer with us today. So I had taken that amount knowing that I wasn't going to be here tomorrow. But God had another plan. And I woke up 2 days later in the front seat of my car, and the only thing I could think of was Teen Challenge. I went back to Teen Challenge. I drove back to Teen Challenge, and I sought out Marty Coleman. And once I sat down in his office, I fell apart. I told him, I said, I was here 3-4 days ago. You told me there's a 3-month waiting list. I don't have 3 months. I need help now. And so he set it up so I could get into an outreach ministry called Good Shepherd Ministries in San Bernardino, where I spent approximately 2 weeks. And the Lord opened the door for me to get into Teen Challenge. I committed my life to Christ in that office in 1987 with Marty Coleman, but God, over the course of a year, took me from just seeking out 3 hots and a cot to really seeing what He can do with a life, how He changed everything. When I first came to the Lord, I couldn't remember anything you said or a conversation we had 5 minutes after we had it. My short-term memory was null and void, none. But God restored my mind. I had wrecked my family. God restored my family. Everything that I had held dear, I had trashed. God restored it. And He's enriched my life so much that words can't explain the gratitude I feel toward my Lord and Savior. Jesus can change you, and Jesus can make out of trash treasure.